Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and I've noticed in a few places online this Klein Multitool has been listed as discontinued, and it's actually an interesting tool, and my hope is, given Klein's innovation lately, especially to step out of their lane and into some pretty cool other spaces, you know, like Bluetooth speakers and digital angle meters and things like that, or angle gauges. This is actually in need of an update because I like the idea. This particular one just has some, one primary fatal flaw. This thing originally sold for less than 40 bucks, which Leatherman, you really have to go into one of their base models, to get anything even close to that price, like this Leatherman Wingman. You get into the more useful, like the Leatherman Surge, which is their big multi-tool, and then this is their Charge titanium. To get into the really high quality, nice stuff. This thing is actually just a workhorse, almost. Now, first of all, I like the knife on this thing. The knife is a fairly sharp, pointed, kind of a drop point knife. It's similar to their actual standalone knife, and I really like this blade. Not the material of it necessarily. It's 440A stainless, but the shape is actually quite functional. This one actually has some stripping grooves on the back. I don't know why they couldn't do that here. But anyway, this knife, I don't mind it at all. It's a little slippery on the handle, and it's way better than some of the other attempts they've had at knives. But anyway, the heart of this thing is this big, beefy, almost kind of a mini lineman plier with wire strippers, both solid and stranded, and some big cutters on the bottom. A couple other features on this thing. So it has the knife, which has a liner lock mechanism right here. It also has a slotted screwdriver. You could also probably use that as a pry bar if you needed to. And it has a Phillips, number 2 Phillips screwdriver. And one other little kind of almost hidden feature is right back here. If you pry this thing out, it's actually a pair of tweezers, kind of nod to the Swiss Army knives of the past. But anyway, let's talk about this thing. The problem, the fatal flaw essentially, is this handle design. Sometimes when you're using pliers or cutting wire or cutting through or stripping wire or cutting wire, you're going to apply a lot of force to a handle. And this is, even though it's rounded, a little bit melted, and feels smooth, and I can see why on the drawing board and the showroom floor at your local tool seller, you might think that's pretty cool. But when you actually go to apply force, this really hurts your hand, which is too bad. Leatherman has gotten it right. You can see how much thicker those are along this edge right here. So yes, you can feel this, but nowhere near bad enough to keep you from using the tool. This thing punishes your hand. And even on both sides, here and here, it just makes it almost unusable. You can hold things with it, but any pressure and it just cuts right into your hand. You need gloves really to use it. That's not the point of a multi-tool. As far as cutting and stripping, it is definitely on par with some of their other kind of multi-tool, kind of multi-plier attempts. Here's very similar with this particular model. This one, I like this, kind of my go-to. Again, spring-loaded. This one's kind of a little better than this, I think. And then this is their hybrid plier, which is like kind of a combination of a whole bunch of things, and it's really handy. They nailed it with this thing. Not that there isn't room for improvement, and if you look at the tips on these guys, I'm going to put my inner tube back on here to hold it closed. If I look at the tips, and I'm going to compare that to the multi-tool, you can see, they're all pretty big, pretty thick. Let's throw this guy in the mix now. So you can see it's a little stripped down, about half the size. So they've just sliced it. So for 40 bucks or less, it's a great tool except for this. And it just seems like they need to update that because the concept is solid. And it's nice to have a good multi-tool, you know, a hard-working multi-tool that you can count on. Now, when you look at the Leathermans, you find that they are not designing anything near a lineman tip. You know, this is probably the thickest on this less expensive one, and you can see just how vastly different those two are. So I like the idea. Maybe Leatherman will come out with one and kind of beat Klein to the punch. Klein's on their way. I like their hand tools a lot, and I like their attempts at some of the other kind of the other types of tools that may not be, you know, in their wheelhouse all the time. This one needs an update. I'm glad it's discontinued to stop disappointing people, but it does need to come out with a better handle because it's a good solid performer. Anyway, so if you see one, maybe not grab it right away, and then Klein, if you're listening, fix the handle and you got yourself a winner. With that, Doc out.